more than an income tax cut, more than a corporate tax cut. What India's economy needed was a GST cut, because GST is something that is paid by everybody. With indirect taxation, the idea is not to have progressive taxation, but we are trying to do progressive taxation. We are saying if you're smoking a cigarette, we'll tax 40%, right?
This is very politically, aligned with what the government wants, mostly because Bihar elections are quite nearby, right?
So all kinds of tax cuts have been sort of exhausted, and this is like a last ditch effort to sort of boost consumption. There is a political salience to this with the Bihar election, but there is also an element of the tariff effect.
Hello and welcome to the Indian Express. I'm Charulata Biswas and welcome to another episode of Express Explained. Today I'm being joined by Udit Misra, who's Senior Associate Editor at the Indian Express. And Udit, thank you so much for joining me. Firstly, for people who are watching, of course, they know this is about the GST cuts, the tax cuts. And just quickly rewinding what happened yesterday. The 56th meeting lasted over 10 hours. It was supposed to be a 2-day meeting of the GST Council, but it only lasted for 10 hours and they were done in just one day. They cleared the next generation reforms under the 8-year-old indirect tax regime. And this would mean that it will pave the way for a broad two-slab structure, which is 5% and 18%. And we are seeing a lot of commodities like soap, paneer, etc., whose rates are going to go down. And some of the luxury and thin goods like tobacco, cigarettes, gutka, they're going to be levied with 40% GST. That's what we are hearing. Firstly, Udit, what is your first reaction to this announcement?
So there are two things. One is that there is this notion that it's a two-tier GST now, but a lot of people are confused. I once, when I first heard it, I was also confused about it because it's actually not a two-tier thing. You have a 0%, which is an exemption, or you
Right.
choose to not tax certain things. Then you have a 5%, then you have a 18%, and then you have a 40%. So you actually have four tiers.
Okay.
And we used to have one more tier, which was a 12% tier
Right.
up until yesterday. So yes, we have lost one slab, tax slab.
Mm-hmm.
And all this matters because you have to understand, viewers have to understand that GST is an indirect tax, right? Indirect taxes are taxes which are not imposed on the people directly. They are imposed on commodities. When people buy those commodities, people
Right.
end up paying those taxes.
Mhm.
Now, with indirect taxation, the idea is not to have progressive taxation, but we are trying to do progressive taxation. We are saying if you're smoking a cigarette, we'll tax 40%, right? So we are attaching some value to it. But with indirect taxation, ideally, there should not be too much value attached. It should be a very flat, low rate, one single rate, and it should solve all the problems. And for the longest time, the idea was that choose one number and just tax it across the board. But there are revenue reasons. Governments don't just give away forego revenue, so they have to concern about that. So as of now there is a four-tier thing effectively, and the good thing is that tax rates for many commodities, both on consumption side and on production side, have been cut down, right? So a lot of things like anywhere, say shampoos, toothpaste, small cars, air conditioners. So a lot of consumers will find that the tax element has come down, so the effective price would be lower, right? A lot of viewers would recall that when when they buy cars, they complain there's a huge GST component, right? So that component would come down, and the way this will impact people is that when the GST component comes down, in the overall price comes down, then you have less inflation, right? Because that tax component was adding to prices. And then on top of that, uh, you have the demand effect, that if you have less prices or lesser price increase or reduction in prices, then you see a boost in demand.
That's
So
that's a
overall,
huge reveal. That's a huge relief for the middle class with it, isn't it? Because that is going to essentially increase the purchasing power of the people out there, right? Lower the taxes, higher the purchasing power. Do you agree with that?
yes, indeed. So that was the idea. And actually, in if some of the viewers have been watching us talk about this topic, even during the budget time in the past, I've been saying that India needs a GST cut since 2019. That more than an income tax cut, more than a corporate tax cut, what India's economy needed was a GST cut, because GST is something that is paid by everybody. Income tax is paid by only people earning certain amount of income, and there are exemptions, and then there are people who do not declare their income, do not pay all the tax. A very minuscule portion pays the income tax, whereas GST is paid by everybody. So if you cut on GST, the effect on demand is much more on everybody. So finally, we've done that after long delay, and this should give economists say that something like 0.2 percentage points of uh, GDP boost. So if we were suppose growing or going to grow at 6% this year, then we might grow by 6.2%. So that is the incremental jump we might see as a result.
And talking about the increment, is there a kind of inflation that we are seeing right now? I mean, I just want to understand if I'm earning as much as I was earning last month. So, with the taxes going down, does that make me even more um, empowers me to buy a car, for example, which I was looking at or I was planning to do for last couple of months. For a person who is planning to buy a car, or EV cars are, I think, not in that bracket, but a
Exactly.
car or a bike, how do you think it
Yes.
will sort of impact my decision?
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's been a long-standing concern that consumption levels in India are not growing as fast as they should, right? And this matters because if your domestic economy is not growing as fast, then you have to depend on the rest of the world, right? And that is where this links with the rest of the world, what is happening with tariffs. That if tariffs typically, tariffs are like a tax. So when tariffs go up, then that basically means that uh, global consumers cannot afford Indian goods, right? Or they choose to afford other goods, other countries' goods. And so Indian producers are hit. Now, this GST tax cut should ideally help both ways, uh, Indians, both Indians who are consuming and Indians who are producing, because this GST cut is like reducing some element of the tariff. Tariff is also a tax, GST is also a tax. You reduce that bit, prices go down, consumers can afford more, they have greater purchasing power, and producers can find more markets, so they can sort of sell more at a time when the rest of the world is sort of shutting doors because every country is becoming more protectionist. So both ways it will help both Indian consumers and Indian producers.
That's great. That's great. Is this Diwali bonanza a bonanza for states as well? But I also wanted to understand how states are impacted, because we have been hearing that they have been continuously talking about how there will be a revenue loss. Can you talk to me about it with some, giving some clarity on that? I mean, somebody who's sitting in Maharashtra and somebody who's sitting in Tamil Nadu, how are these two individuals going to be impacted?
Right. So it's not as if all states get exactly the same kind of tax, equal amount of tax, but states predominantly get a heavy chunk of the GST that is earned. The State Bank of India's chief economist has just come out with a report which said that roughly 70% of every 100 rupees that is collected in GST goes to states, and then therein Maharashtra might get one share and Tamil Nadu might get another share and Kerala might get another share. Now, there were some concerns raised already. I think the representative from Kerala, the minister concerned, had raised an issue that this decision might lead to a revenue loss of something like 7,000 crores for Kerala. But again, the SBI analysis shows that maybe in the short term, in the immediate term, it might appear that way. But when you look for the whole year, overall, the states will get a higher share. Because you also have to understand that when you cut taxes, growth goes up. People buy more. So the total revenue is not just a function of the tax rate; it's also a function of how much people are buying. So if you add all of that, SBI estimates that something like 26,000 crores will go additional to all the states. There might be variance between what Kerala gets and what Maharashtra gets, but overall, it won't be a loss per se for them. It is also, although true, that in this whole rejigging of GST rates, where some things have been put from 28% to 40% bracket, while others have been brought from 28 to 18 and from 12 to 15 and to 12 to 5, the effective loss in revenue for the government has been around 48,000 crores. So, government is giving this boost to the economy, on paper taking a hit, but maybe if the economy responds with higher growth, we might be able to recover that money or sort of grow faster.
We'll see whether there's a dent or not, but I want to rewind and focus on what you said, which was about this decision coming a little bit late. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Because today we went for a ground report and people had a similar sentiment, and they said, this is very politically, aligned with what the government wants, mostly because Bihar elections are quite nearby, right? And this is like a lollipop. So, I mean, what is your assessment here? Why did you say that it is a little delayed?
Well, the one thing that I've learned tracking policy is that whenever some improvement is happening, take it with both hands. Do not deny it. It is delayed, as I said, since 2019, and this is part of our record. People can go back to the pieces that I have written in budget analysis in particular since 2019, and many of the videos that we've recorded here at Indian Express, that we've repeatedly said that GST cut was the thing that was required. And one reason why India's economy was not growing as fast as we imagined, or wanted it to, was primarily because Indians were not consuming enough. Because they were not consuming enough, they were not buying enough stuff from businesses. As a result, businesses were not investing new facilities. And you remember the whole episode where the finance minister said, "Why isn't Hanuman flying? Why isn't private sector investing?" So it's not as if government is unaware of this. They've tried everything, barring the GST cut up until now. They've given income tax cut last 2 years, with income tax relief to 7 lakh people earning up to 7 lakh, then next year to people earning up till 12 lakhs per annum. And prior to that, in 2019, they'd given a corporate tax cut. So all kinds of tax cuts have been sort of exhausted. And this is like a last ditch effort to sort of boost consumption. And it is coming obviously at a time, yes, there is a political salience to this with the Bihar election, but there is also an element of the tariff effect that, Indian economy will face some headwinds now if the 50% tariff from US continues. US is a massive trade partner for India,
But
and it will lead to...
Wouldn't the GST Council have planned it way before Donald Trump announced the tariffs? I mean,
So I'm not saying I mean, these things have been in the works. Actually, these discussions have been in the works, and this thought has been there that some rationalization has to happen, because apart from the cut, which sort of a lot of focus is on, there's also rationalization of duty structure. Sometimes you had higher taxes on inputs and lower taxes on outputs. So that has been resolved. The process has been simplified in terms of GST registrations or the sort of refunds that happen. So it's not as if just it's any one trigger. But yes, it is coming at a time when India does need some kind of a economic fillip, where India is going to face some headwinds. Most estimates suggest that half a percentage point of GDP might be hit. And what I keep pointing out is that the hit would be more on livelihoods than in captured in the GDP. Half a percentage of GDP in leather industry, or in people amongst who are selling fish, or selling carpets. Their half a percent of GDP is a massive livelihood issue, whereas some other place it may not be that way. So it's coming at a time when Indian economy needs a boost, needs some kind of a positive reinforcement. So I think it should be welcome, and let's hope that we move to honestly to a structure where we just have one tax rate. I honestly don't think that having too many slabs helps matters. Even now, I mean, just like when we started in 2017, we thought that it was a good and simple tax, and look, 8 years down the line, with all the stories about whether paneer can be sold at this rate inside the restaurant and at another rate outside the restaurant, with the AC on, not the AC on. It has taken 8 years to come for some kind of a simplification. Perhaps we'll have more simplification and lower rates and lower slabs in the future. So that's the hope, that it will make it easier for most people, because GST is something that every Indian pays.
Thank you, Udit, for clarifying and giving all those inputs on this. It's always a pleasure to speak to you and get to understand the ongoing development. And very happy. I think people are very happy with the announcement. Nirmala Sitharaman faced a lot of flack last time after the popcorn taxation. And unlike last time, I think people haven't stormed social media with any kind of criticism. But let's see how India is sort of prepared. And uh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. And
Thank
thank
you.
you, viewers, for staying with us through this conversation. If you liked it and found it informative, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, The Indian Express. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Udit, for joining me. Thanks.